You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Ever since I was about the age of 4, I remember that I can remember dreams about that far back. I remember as I approached the ages of 5 and 6 that I began to understand what nightmares were, and mine was actually a pretty simple one. It was Godzilla chasing me through an empty open field. I could hear the thundering of his steps and the dropping of large boulders just landing near by my right side. And I remember that I would approach my mother about this, and I would explain to her just how much and how afraid I was that this was happening and what I could do about it. And in her wisdom of a parent, she just simply said, well, why don't you just turn around and face him? Why don't you just go ahead and fight back? Well, as a kid, you don't question something like that. You just simply do what you're told. So sure enough, as I had that nightmare again, and I felt the thundering steps behind me and the dropping of the large boulders, sure enough, I turned around and I faced this nemesis that was pursuing me and trying to destroy me in my dream world. Interestingly enough, this is how it turned out. Eventually, what it turned into was a large, tall, blonde woman who eventually went around the corner of a house, and this was a familiar field at an area that we used to live in Texas, went around the corner and disappeared, and I find myself looking up the street, which is the exact street that went up and led to my house from this particular area. And I was always fascinated by the fact that something like that would transform, that no longer that nightmare was there. Then as I started to, grow up and work with my dreams, I became familiar with the term simply known as lucid dreaming, which apparently, as I understand, is when you're in your dream, you actually awaken, and you can begin to control the outcome of what is happening. And I'll tell you, I've been on a fascinating journey ever since, but it's been one that I've been wanting to find someone who is an expert, if you will, to be able to help explain these things to me. Well, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is such an expert that I'm sure that it's not only going to enlighten me about my particular path and journey, but hopefully you, the listener, as well, when it comes to the world of dreaming. And on our program today is Barbara Emrys. She is a writer and teacher of transformational wisdom called Toltec Dreaming, based on the philosophy of living life as art. And through her long-term workshops and private apprenticeships, she has seen dramatic changes in behavior and perception in students from all points of the world. And today she's going to join us and talk to us about this ancient wisdom simply known as Toltec Dreaming. And Barbara Emrys, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, what was your journey that led you to the world called Toltec Dreaming and its philosophy?
Well, I think as with most people, we go through life on automatic up until a certain point, and then we start either asking questions or despairing that anything will ever be answered for us, and just sort of putting all those questions on the back burner again. I reached that point in my life where I didn't even know what the word awareness meant, but I was so attracted to it. And just in having that intent that I would understand awareness, if not just as a concept, actually to live it and to talk it and walk it. And just with that intent, so many things happened in my life quite suddenly, and the most important where this was concerned was the meeting of Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, as you may know, and starting to apprentice with him. And the reason this helped, at that point he hadn't even written a book yet, but he was teaching in the shamanic tradition. And the reason he helped me so much was just the kind of things you were describing at the beginning of the show about realizing we can change the way we dream. And, you know, it wasn't really his directive, nor is it mine, that people worry about their nighttime dreaming. His point of view was, as the ancient Toltecs thought, that we're dreaming all the time. Whether we're asleep or awake, we're interpreting light. We're basically seeing light bounce off of objects and light radiate from objects, and we're deciding to tell a story about it based on symbols and based on the beliefs we've been initiated and indoctrinated in. So we're kind of making an interpretation of what we see all the time. And, of course, there's a consensual interpretation called the way humanity dreams itself, and then there's the individual interpretation, which is the way we personally dream ourselves. And it's almost always based on the beliefs provided and instilled in us when we were very, very small children. And as adults, we start asking all these questions, and we start wondering why we're on automatic, why we're not responding to our world more authentically. And the answer is, we learn certain patterns of behavior and certain patterns of thinking very early in life, and we never change them. So we can give ourselves that gift as adults of seeing the way we think, seeing the way we perceive things, and the way we respond emotionally, like you being chased by Godzilla, and questioning these things. Whether we're awake or asleep, question them, face them, see that really the horrors that we perceive are virtual horrors. We're not really being chased down in jungles by lions and tigers. We're being chased down by ideas. So my evolution came through that realization and the teachings of this beautiful man. And his idea in writing the 4 agreements was to start changing just typical behavior patterns. Like, why are you taking things personally? Why are you making assumptions? And start from there, and then begin to see that it's all been virtual, and we can change the way we respond to our virtual reality.
Now, it's quite interesting, Barbara, too, that we're in a day and age of quantum physics, and when you really begin to, I guess, have a good feeling or understanding of that, it blows people away to think, okay, well, if we can create our reality, how come I'm having such a hard time and struggling with it? And you can see that, at least in my experience, that through dreaming and in the dream world that you can actually begin to work with that to do the kind of reality projection, if you will, that you desire. Would that be kind of right on the money there? Or?
Yes, I think to challenge people to work in their nighttime dreamings when they're asleep, when they're completely surrendering, it's a challenge for people like you who have found maybe some way of manipulating and at least observing in a objective way your nighttime dreams. I think, but to ask most people to start working with their nighttime dreams is a little too challenging. What they can work with is the daytime dreaming, just the ordinary moments of their life where they're in response to everything in ways that are not appropriate, like being fearful, being anxious, being stressed. And, of course, if you're able to, just through your intent, and most of us are, just to go to sleep at night and say, okay, this time when Godzilla chases me, I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to consciously tell myself or remind myself before I go to sleep to face this problem and see what happens, see what fantastic miracles open up in the course of the dreaming. You tried it as a child, and it worked. We can try it as adults. The only thing that makes it not work is our belief that you cannot intervene or interfere with the basic patterns of sleep. Yes, you can. But more importantly, in my teaching and what I'm trying to communicate to everybody out there trying to get through their normal day is that you can also do this in the course of your day. You can say, this is a dream. I'm interpreting things in ways that are habitual, that are ways that are automatic, and I don't have to do it. And I can just stop for a minute and perceive this event, this person, this interaction, this moment, and make a change based on my changing perception. This is a huge act of power, and it really doesn't have to involve the nighttime sleeping process.
Mm-hmm. I know through the course of this hour I'll be sharing some of the insights that I've had, or at least experiences that I've had in the dreaming state, just to kind of give people an idea that really what you do in the dream world can be transferred, but I've had kind of a hard time with that in this reality, so to speak, to be able to believe that I can do just about anything. Now, I know one of the things that I started doing as I became older, as I came to understand what lucid dreaming was the challenge of flying, pretty much, like Superman. And it was pretty interesting how I started. This was going into the dream state and intending to do this. And eventually, after feeling like I'm swimming in the air and so forth, I began to get into the mode of like supersonic flying. And then from that stage, I began to intend on ascending as high as I could go. And that even became just like the same thing when you start doing the flying mode. You're kind of swimming and grabbing into the air, but you're getting, it's like there's so high above the atmosphere you get, and then this is too much of a struggle, so you go and you wind yourself down back toward Earth. Now, in the realm of the Toltec teachings, which you were an apprentice of, when someone gets into the dream world and intends like that, what do you suppose is truly going on at a spiritual or soul level?
Okay, I just want to reiterate before I continue that to me there is no real distinction between the two, the waking and the sleeping. The difference is in the rules. In sleeping you have no rules, which is why you're able to ascend, you're able to go at warp speed, you're able to do things as far as your imagination can carry you, and probably further, because your imagination expands when there's no longer a mental censor telling you you can't and you can do things. When you're,
but it sure is a lot of fun, isn't it?
It's wonderful, and it's wonderful to be aware as you're doing it. It's wonderful to be aware when you've presumably waked up, and you can say, "Wow, that was an awfully cool dream." And it tends to be exhilarating, and that exhilaration holds for days, perhaps. That's really the process there, is freeing ourselves from what we think is possible, but what we think at all. We're freeing ourselves from what we think, period. When you wake up in the morning, immediately you want to put that dream into context. That's my nighttime thing, this is my daytime thing. But really the only thing that has changed is there are certain rules we obey when we're awake. We obey the laws of physics. I'm hoping you never tried to hurl yourself off of the roof of your home.
No. There's a level of common sense that has to be instilled here.
And all of this has to do with common sense. That we cannot, challenge the laws of physics. There's certain things that will happen to us if we try to fly without, some kind of proper machinery. There are certain things that will happen to us on a less definitive level if we try to disobey the laws of society. We don't want to start going through red lights because there are no more rules. We've set up rules in our waking dreams, our waking hours, and we obey them, or we pay certain consequences. They may not be dire consequences, but any consequence that hurts the human body is not acceptable from my point of view. So to a great extent we obey the laws of society and, of course, the laws of physics, or we pay consequences. But out of that structure, and structure is the thing that distinguishes the waking dream from the sleeping dream, out of that structure, really, we don't know what's possible or not possible. We only have, our experience to tell us. So you experience many, many things in the sleeping state that you never thought were possible. You experience the freedom and exhilaration. And my point in my teaching, and this is what the ancient Toltecs believe, when you wake up, when you enter the structure of human, waking dreaming, things are still possible that we can't imagine. We're just so busy living within
surviving almost
this very restricted idea of what we can do. It's not just a question of survival, but it's a question of the realm of this is what I was told I can do, this is what I think I am, this is what I believe. And if we can't push past that, we really will never experience freedom and expression and even in behavior.
Now, I'm kind of curious, just to really shed some light on who the Toltecs were.
Okay.
It's quite interesting when you take a look at the Toltecs, or you take a look at, for instance, African, I can't even place the right word, but the idea is to take a look at, for instance, their deeply rooted religion of Vodun, where the idea is that spirits come and they possess a body so they can be in the physical realm, and then they do these particular acts that just physically seem to be beyond rational common sense, so to speak, but to show that the body is sort of one of those temporary vehicles of which you get to be consciously aware and feel the world or feel the universe around you. What was the philosophy of the Toltecs?
Well, the Toltec people, as it's been described to me in my apprenticeships, really were just a community of like thinkers. We're not talking about a race or a religion here.
Right.
We're talking about a community of people who believe that, well, wait a minute, we're really basically, each of us sees the same thing in different ways. So it makes sense to say that we're all dreaming our little personal dream according to our beliefs, according to our physiological or psychological makeup. We're really dreaming our life, whether we're asleep or awake, and we can make this dream into something magnificent. We can make this into a dream that is not ruled by fear, but by joy and love and confidence. And they basically thought of themselves as artists of life. And the word Toltec means artist. So their approach was, okay, we're here on Earth. We don't know how we got here. We're here in human form. It's not going to last. But while it lasts, we can make this dream into something magnificent. And the best way to do that is to feel free of all these thoughts and ideas that make us afraid or make us feel oppressed or angry or resentful. And that was their approach. And, of course, they built pyramids, they built cities, they built learning centers that reflected that idea. That was the essential and the fundamental concept behind their existence as a community of thinkers.
Now, in their philosophy, I'm sure they must have opened this up. Now, where does fear and apprehension and things such as that come into play with our existence to the point that it can actually, as you've said earlier, and you see it happening around you all the time, make a person go on autopilot and just feel so unsatisfied and at times just so empty?
Well, we're on autopilot all the time. It's not really a conscious, obviously not a conscious thing. It's automatic. And it's automatic because we learn certain rules about life, about how we are, about how other people are, about how we should interact and how we should behave, and what is possible or not possible. We learn these things at a very early age, and we never went back to review them. So we're really responding, most of us as adults, even elderly adults, and this is why I love the idea of your show, because at what point do we finally say, you know, I don't have to keep doing this. I don't have to keep repeating patterns in relationships and interactions and with myself that I've been doing all my life just because I've been doing them all my life. I can go back here and review this. Where does this fear come from? Where does this fear of meeting strangers or this fear of expressing my authentic feelings without having to worry about whether it's appropriate? Where does all this fear come from? Maybe I can't locate it in terms of a time and a place in my childhood, but I can say that right now it has no basis in fact or reality. It has particularly nothing beneficial to offer me in terms of my present moment happiness. So in questioning these little patterns of ours that have added up over the years and strengthened and seem to be rooted in some truth, they are not rooted in truth. They're rooted in just habit. So in going back and reviewing this, we can actually alter, change, and do this fantastic thing called transformation. That doesn't mean we're going to grow another leg or a foot. It means we're going to get another perception. And in seeing things differently, we get to act and behave differently automatically. Automatically, we're more in touch with the truth. Automatically, we're more authentic. Automatically, we're kinder, more loving, because we're no longer indulging in the fears and the beliefs that cause those fears.
And it's just amazing to think about the possibilities, too, that if someone could learn by doing pretty much similarly what you did, apprenticing under the idea of the Toltecs and the philosophy of living life as art, that you would find that the changes that happen in your life actually are a lot simpler than you think. Would that be kind of true?
Well, life is a lot simpler than we thought. Life is really simple. We intend and things happen. We've been doing this all our lives, and because things happen that don't please us, we say, well, we're not very good magicians. But in fact, we're excellent, excellent magicians. We imagine something, and it generally ends up being part of our reality. But the imagining has been constricted and restricted according to beliefs. If we don't imagine, we can be, a leader of a community or have all the love we want or be prosperous in our life. If we don't think that's within the realm of possibility because of our worthiness or because of this doesn't happen or historically it hasn't happened, then chances are it's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean we haven't been using intent and haven't been making things magically happen all our lives. They just tend to be disappointing to us because we expect the disappointment, or we expect that we're not going to be worthy of something, wonderful, or a lot of love from any outside source, or that we can love and share that with so many people. If we have restricted ideas about what we can do and how we express ourselves, of course it's going to come back in a glorious reality for us.
Now, here's something I was kind of puzzling over, too, and it was something I explained to my partner is in the teachings, or maybe even in your understanding and experience, can the dream world also be the gateway between the God force or universal force, whatever anybody wants to call it, between that and your spiritual self?
The dream world, as you're calling it, is when we're in our sleeping state. And, of course, there's an access to all the information of the universe in our consciousness. We are just a little piece of the universe. So, of course, we have access to whatever information is in the universe. And I don't mean information like, what you learned in college or on CNN. I mean the information that rides on the waves of light throughout the universe. We have access to that, and in our sleeping, dreaming state, of course, we're not so invested in the belief that says we don't have access to it. So, of course, there's wonderful revelations that happen in sleep. There's wonderful visions. There's wonderful ways that life communicates with us in our sleep that we don't have the defenses for because, the brain is asleep. And the mind, which is a property of the brain, which is constantly interpreting, is pretty much defenseless against great revelation. But, the most satisfying thing about being alive as a human on Earth is that we can wake up and instead of trying to make those revelations and experiences smaller through what we believe, was possible, or, every little opinion about what we just experienced, we can actually put down beliefs, we can put down opinions, and we can have those revelations in a waking state. We can, in other words, remove the obstructions to great revelation and to our intimate interaction with life itself and all its information, simply by not investing so much in these little beliefs that have, sort of held us thinking, we're safe all our life. We're not necessarily safe by having a very small system of beliefs or a rigid system of beliefs. We're, in fact, less safe. We're going to do things based on knowledge rather than on our open communication with life, which, in my opinion, is not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And we've proven that. We've proven that just by, putting so much investment on knowledge, on what we know, on what other people think, on what we have thought, instead of opening ourselves up to the great experience of life in every moment and just perceiving and then responding to that perception without a lot of thinking and anguish involved. So when you say, shouldn't life get simpler or doesn't it, I'm saying it absolutely is simple. It really is just a matter of having an intimate relationship with the power that created everything, regardless of what you want to call it. The power that creates everything in all moments is part of your power. You're a reflection of that. So things get very, very simple when we're not agonized by, what we should do or, could do, if conditions were different, if, I was different, if life was different. When all those things are put away, it's just a relationship between this manifestation of life and life itself. And that's pretty simple. It's as simple as having a relationship with your partner, your spouse, your child, if you just put down all the reasons why you can't get along, And we tend to invest too much on the reasons why we must struggle, or we don't get it, or that somebody else has power but we don't. if you put down those beliefs and stop investing so much in them, you'll see how much power you have.
Well, it's also interesting too. You made me think of Byron Katie, and she simply says, and it's really true, but sometimes it's hard to live in this truth, is that reality is kinder than you think it is.
Well, reality is exactly what you think it is. And,
exactly.
And to that extent, we're all just kind of living within something kind of virtual. What I am experiencing in this moment is not what Daniel is experiencing. You're seeing it through your own point of view and your own belief systems and your own domestication, and you're experiencing it in another room, in another place. And so you're not having the same experiences I am having right now, although we're in the same conversation. So that tells me, and it's certainly told the Toltecs and many great philosophers throughout time, that we're really kind of doing a virtual dream here. Whatever's in my head is my experience. And, of course, then depending on how I invest in it, how I believe in it, how much faith I put in it, it becomes sort of a landscape that my human being has to walk through. So it's not so much that we create the bad luck in our lives or the misfortune, but we perceive things a certain way. And so we're going to walk through a real landscape of events and people and objects that are, moved and sort of colored and textured by our beliefs. That makes for a less than fortunate environment. That makes for, let's say, a less satisfying experience of life. If we weren't so influenced by what we thought or what we believed or what other people may think, the experience becomes much more authentic. Just life communicating with life. In other words, you communicating with everything.
Now, I know that I've had other guests on the show, and it's really quite interesting when you take the world of self-help. We're glutton with it. There's $1 billion that are being spent on people trying to take courses to be better than they are and to try to maybe make more money to have better, easier lifestyles. But the point is what I've seen, and this goes way back over, say, the last 30 years, is how it's really changed to where you see more personal responsibility in what is being shared. And it's almost like there has become a spiritual emergence on how a person can understand themselves in the world. And what's interesting is, as I was looking, reading along some of the information and checking out your website, which is barbaraemrys.com. It's EMRYS.com. And you have a segment in there where there were conversations with people that you had. Now, one of the neat things that I've seen or experienced over the last couple of years is the idea of beliefs, which you've been talking about throughout the show, that these are the little stinkers right there that you really see your world through without even being aware of it. And what I like that you said in one conversation, and I've heard this from a few others, is that you have an inset belief. That's sort of like a computer chip that says this is the way you think or you believe, and therefore automatically you will, in this world, you will go out and find those things that will sustain those beliefs to be true. That if you could simply change that, you then will change the circumstances outside of yourself. So that, and so like, for instance, if somebody's, wanting to get rich, but then their relationship with money, their belief is, I don't deserve that, or I've always been poor and that's just the way it is. No matter how much they intend it, no matter how many affirmations they do, how many goals they set, whatever the case is, they will still attract poverty because of that deep-seated belief that they may not consciously be aware of, but is deeply in the subconscious mind. Now, having said that, how can that be helped in the dream work and the dream world that the Toltecs have shared?
Well, as I said,
I hope that wasn't a big snowball question. I was trying to tone it down.
It comes down to just an essential thing that you believe that there is this one thing called life, and everything is a component of life. And because we're human beings, we only really know how human beings work, or we only have the potential to know how human beings work, and they seem to be driven by a story or a narrative in their thinking. And then they, act out that story. And depending on how you were taught as a child or how you've taught yourself through experiences, good or bad experiences, that story is going to regulate human happiness. Having seen that, the Toltecs didn't see any reason why they shouldn't tell a better story. And that meant just thinking.
I like that. Tell a better story. How about that?
Tell a better story. If this is what the human being is going to have to respond to emotionally and physically, then let's tell it better. Let's tell a story of how you have a great relationship with life, that life is here to give you everything you want. You just have to really decide what you want according to your idea of happiness. Once again, Daniel's idea is not the same as my idea. Probably there's variations. So I can't say, Daniel, what makes me happy? And you can't ask me what makes you happy. But I think as adults, it's our job to find out, because we spent the first 20 years of our lives pretty much acting according to what made other people happy.
Exactly, especially when you consider the 12 years in school. For crying out loud, there's enough to instill a bunch of negative beliefs in somebody.
Well, exactly, and it wasn't our fault. It wasn't their fault. Everybody, I think, was doing what they thought was best. This is the assumption I'm going to make. Everybody is doing their best regardless of what it looks like. And it's an important assumption because it takes away our need to blame anybody. Here we are adults. We don't need to be blaming parents or teachers or old friends or old lovers for our misery. We need to take responsibility for not being miserable, and the key is in the way we tell our own story. Awareness is such a fantastic and ever revealing and giving kind of instrument in creating a dream that satisfies us. Let's be aware. Let's be aware of what we think. It's really pretty easy. We start listening to how we talk and how we converse with people, how we communicate our convictions, our opinions, rant and rave about, what we believe. That tips us off. If you say, I believe this or that or the other, immediately you have a little insight into how you think.
It's funny that you bring that up. It reminds me of an old episode of Seinfeld where Elaine was just all elated about this guy who she believed had this great open mind about anything. And so Jerry just simply says, so why don't you find out what he thinks about abortion? And he knew he was just sliding her into a difficult situation there. But it was funny because she brought that up, and it was amazing how, certain things, you just have an opinion one way or the other. That's just the way it is, it seems.
Well, that's true, but, it comes to something as big as abortion or as big as who should be president, to something as small as, well, I can't wear yellow, or I don't go out into public on Fridays, or I can't eat meat, or I can't do this, and all of these things are kind of random based on beliefs. Although you may build an entire dream about it, meaning your life, your waking lifespan. They're random things, and are they making you happy? Are they leading you to more enjoyment of life, or are they diminishing your enjoyment of life because you think you have to uphold these beliefs through action? This is a really important thing, because I don't want to refer to beliefs as the big things, the big society-changing things. I want people to realize that they have beliefs, and they're very, very rooted, very rigid, and until you go in there and start playing with them and start listening to how you express those beliefs, and that they're not helping you love more, they're not helping you enjoy life more, they're not helping you enjoy yourself more.
They're just not serving you, yes.
They're not serving your happiness, period, and we haven't really given our happiness a whole lot of consideration. We built in the United States a society predicated on the idea that we have the right to pursue happiness, but I don't think we know how to identify it.
Right.
Okay, what makes me happy? I in the course of my teaching, I ask my students this all the time, and I can say universally they don't know. That's not their fault. They're not stupid. It's not that they haven't reflected on this. It's just so difficult to pinpoint because there's so many things that come first, like duty and obligations, but mostly what you think is appropriate. And your complete obsession with what you think is appropriate for yourself to do, or to other people to do, or to or for Americans to do, or for a human being to do, all these things restrict your idea of, or your appreciation for the topic of happiness. So with all my students, I urge them to give some consideration to what would make them happy, and it can't look like what's going to make somebody else happy. What makes you happy? Generally, it's not going to be something that restricts the happiness of another human. Generally, what makes us happy is loving. It's giving, not necessarily to a charity, just giving, giving ourselves, our presence, our expression. That usually makes us very happy. But we put so many, rules and regulations on how we should express ourselves that we give up on the idea that, it's something that comes out of us that's going to make us happy, not something that, we can get or attain or achieve. And that's the initial thing to understanding how to make your life a masterpiece is first, let's identify a few things that makes us happy. You might even be surprised. You might find that, you've never been to the ocean, but you dream of water all the time. Let's go and,
Or, hey, put this one on for size. You dream about swimming,
yes.
And in the dream world, you actually dream it in such a unique way. Now, I've done this. This goes back to the lucidity part, where I'm underwater and I begin to breathe. And it takes time because you know that in the physical world you couldn't do that. But in this world, you take it in, you can feel the pressure of the water into your lungs. You're starting to doubt yourself, but after a while, you work with it, and before you know it, you're swimming with the speed of a dolphin and taking in air underwater, just as though you're breathing regular oxygen above the water. It's quite fascinating what you can do. And what you can do by challenging, say, your beliefs or, the idea that you're set here in this reality and, well, I can't do some of not those particular things, but certain things that you probably could do if you just applied yourself.
Well, certainly we figured out very innovative ways of, living underwater and living in the air and flying through space and all these things that, human beings can't do just in terms of the laws of physics, as I was talking about earlier. We find our way into situations as, imaginative creatures. We find our way into situations we didn't think we ever could. But then there's that wonderful realization that we're in a virtual world. We're pretty much acting or reacting, talking, walking through a virtual world of our own imagining. And so we can have the exhilarating experiences that you just described. Maybe we'll never see the ocean. Maybe we'll never see a dolphin swim or dive into the water ourselves. But simply because we are a product of life, which is infinite and eternal, we can experience any aspect of life. It's really a question of the restrictions we make on our imagination and our belief system. And, of course, I'm not suggesting anybody try to fly or try to breathe underwater. I'm saying these are experiential things that are not limited to, having to be in water. We're much more, free from the constructs of what we think are reality than we think we are. We're much more free to be spontaneous and authentic in a moment than we believe we are. We don't have to step on anyone's toes or disrespect any other creature in the universe in order to be happy. And that's the thing I want people, to realize, because I notice so often that the restrictions people put on their happiness, they always use somebody else as an excuse. I can't do this because so-and-so needs me, or so-and-so would, be embarrassed by me, or these people would wonder who the heck I am. We make other people the conspirators in our unhappiness, and that's just not respectful to them. And so in reviewing what makes you happy and what's keeping you from that expression of happiness, it's important to see what our excuses are and how much we may be invested in the idea that we shouldn't be happy or that happiness is for frivolous people. Happiness is your birthright, and if you're not pursuing it in some way, and if you're throwing obstacles in the way of happiness, then I think we need to infuse a little awareness we need to really approach this as adults in the most spiritual way. And I talk about spiritual adulthood all the time. We grow up physically, intellectually. We think we know everything. We've read every book. But how are we growing spiritually? This is, speaking directly to that topic. We're growing spiritually when we're no longer restricted and constricted by our own ideas, when knowledge isn't pulling and pushing at us, and when we don't limit our enjoyment of life through simple little opinions and beliefs or the idea of what's appropriate. Let's grow up spiritually. The end result is we respect all things, beginning with us, but going out into the realm of, any life form. Respect all things. And in that state of awareness, you can't help but be happy. You're no longer defending your ideas, or you're no longer defending yourself against other things or other people or other thoughts. You respect everybody's thoughts. That doesn't mean you share them. You respect them. And, happiness is almost instantaneously once you're aware of that.
For those of you just joining the program, you're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and our guest today is Barbara Emeries, and she has been a student in the Toltec tradition of the art of dreaming, and we've been talking about how you can work in your dream worlds to hopefully change your outer reality. I want to thank some of the guests out there for joining us, such as Tina. She's on here on the line as well. And if anybody has a question or comment, feel free to call in and ask Barbara. I'm sure she could help you with that, especially when it comes to dreams. Now, I'd like to talk about your workshops. Now, you've been doing these for quite a long time with people from around the world. What are some of the kinds of people that come and see you? Because I know that when it comes to the realm of, let's say, wanting to transform yourself, and then somebody slips in, well, let's come in for some dream coaching, there's that feeling that, well, this is some of that magical fairy woo-woo stuff, but I know that it's not that, because I've read plenty of books. I've been, call it a student of dreaming and lucid dreaming for years, and I can see the power of how this can transform you at a deeper core level. And what I want to know is what kind of people come to your workshops, and what are some of the reasons they're there, and how do they work with their dream realms through the Toltec traditions?
Okay, I started teaching as a colleague of Miguel Ruiz, and so of course I had a natural student base. He had many followers dating back to when he was working as a shaman. His idea when he stopped identifying himself as a shaman, his idea was that people are far too invested in their superstitions and, putting power outside of themselves. So he would bring it down to something far more commonsensical, which is what inspired him to write the 4 Agreements. Now, in the 4 Agreements, basically he's suggesting that in changing just interactive behavioral responses, you can start becoming more and more aware. The students I have now came out of that tradition, and for the most part, they've been, working on many other traditions throughout their lives, whether it's something as familiar as Christianity or something more exotic. They've been working on their own spiritual development for a long time, and I consider this, as Dr. Ruiz considers it, the Toltec dreaming, as something that puts you into a permanent state of awareness. It really doesn't indulge a whole lot of superstition or even allegiance to a lot of ideas or old traditions. It really is, okay, you're responsible for your happiness. You're responsible for your present moment awareness. What are you going to do about it? And that's the kind of person that is attracted to my teaching.
Now, what has been some of the transformations that people have experienced as they take your workshop, and in what ways do you work with people?
Well, I really just concentrate on weekend workshops, and usually it's with the...
Those are the most fun, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, it's...
Little volleyball, some lunch in between, and then it's back to dreaming.
It's exhausting, too, but we've been, for many years, I've been doing this for, 7 or 8 years, we've been doing incredible things just by concentrating on doing them intensely. Up until this year, in fact, I've never really let people leave the premises. And it's not a question of not being comfortable or not getting food or not going out to dinner. It really is, we all live in the same place, wherever we are, for three days, at least from Friday night to Sunday morning. It's not that way in my workshop in Phoenix anymore because of logistics, but I try to keep people focused during that span of time and really to prepare for what they're going to go back to in their own personal dream. It's no good my talking about the theory of, getting along with your husband or your wife if you're going to go home and forget it. So, there's a lot of my talking and interaction, and also the idea of dreaming itself, where we're seated, we're quiet for an extended period of time, and just watching how the mind works. Because if we don't understand how our minds work, how they rebel against, not knowing something, then we can't really expect to change the automatic responses in our day-to-day life. So
now, there was a time.
Everything going on, but mostly these people are very, very dedicated to the idea of taking responsibility for their own happiness and seeing the ways they obstruct that process and making solid changes in behavior and in thought. And they do most of their work, the most important part of their work, between my monthly weekend workshops. I keep students coming back month after month after month. In some cases, it's been years, because they see the difference in their interactions and behavior, and because they see that everything is funny all the time, that life is a happy experience all the time. And when they arrived in my class, they weren't experiencing life that way. They were pretty much, invested in the idea that everything had to be a struggle, and it was a struggle that could not be overcome. That's not the case with a student that's been with me, a year or more. They've banished that particular belief from their little dictionary of thoughts. They're just spontaneously more happy people.
Now, we have Chuck on the line. Chuck, did you have a question for Barbara, or maybe a comment about what we're talking about here today?
Well, I just believe it was Diane. No, who part of the Davis group here? Barbara. She attended our show last week, and I was.
I'm sorry, I can hardly hear.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing as Okay. Well, yeah, we're having a hard time receiving you there, Bart.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
No, I was invited by your better half. She attended our show, I believe, last week, and of course you weren't on last week, I don't believe, and we have a lot of common ground here. And Tina's direction is what I've been following since 1960, and trying to share with other people the same thoughts. So it was very interesting to show up today. Mm-hmm. I almost missed the show. I was out in the garden, and the things that she talks about are the things that are very dear to my heart. And
good.
I hope that you'll have lots of downloads of this, because it's very, very important information.
Well, the best thing, too, is also share with your community, as we've talked about before, because it's usually one step at a time that expands out into the community as well. And I want to thank you. Now, did you have any specific question or comment for Barbara?
No, just congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate that very much. We're glad that you're tuning into the show. And for those of you just tuning in also, you can find out more about Beyond 50 Radio just by going to our website, beyond50radio.com. And our guest here today joining us on the program is Barbara Emrys, and she's sharing with us the wonderful teachings of the art of dreaming through the Toltecs. Now, Barbara, I know that some time ago, this was probably back in the late 80s, I picked up a book called The Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda. Now, how is what Carlos has learned from Don Juan maybe perhaps just different from what the Toltecs and what you have learned in the art of dreaming?
Well, Castaneda's contribution was fantastic at a time when we weren't even questioning our realities, and it's not so much the idea of having to defame the way we perceive reality, but really to ask questions, to wonder why or whether a change of perception wouldn't change the entire landscape of what you believe is your personal reality. And he introduced that thought, which was so very important. My feeling is we need the next step, which is what do we do about it once we can see it differently? What do we infuse into our way of perceiving and our own, personal interactions with people that makes the difference to our happiness? And of course, the answer is love. Love isn't an emotion. Love isn't just, a sentiment. It's a force of life. And we have so many rules that restrict our giving and receiving of love that we don't really understand that this is impeding our happiness. Beyond Castaneda, I would say, is realize that you're dreaming all the time, that it's not a question of exercising your power over other people to bend the rules and see things differently. It's a question of exercising your power over your own belief system. And all the things that are impeding your ability to love have to do with your belief system.
It's just amazing to think that it's all really just that simple.
Well, it is simple. We've been kind of programmed to see it in a far more complicated way, but I also respect that. And however people want to make it complicated, I respect that. I spent most of my life trying to make things complicated.
Isn't it funny how we must have had a belief in there that was telling us you must make things complicated and difficult on yourself to learn and grow?
I think the key belief is that we must in some way suffer to pay for a moment's happiness, and I think that needs to be dispelled very quickly. We don't have to earn our happiness. It's our birthright. But at the same time, we must be aware that all things, all people, all points of view need to be respected, and it's not admissible to trample on, their happiness in order to get a measure of our own. And it's not necessary. It's not necessary. As I was saying a little earlier, all we have to do is feel, that we're expressing ourselves authentically, that we're loving in every moment, that we're not restricting the enjoyment we have of life, in order to make everybody else happy around us as well.
Forget it. It's never going to happen with more than 6.5 billion people on the earth. I double dare anybody to try to make everybody happy.
No, but wouldn't you see? That's another way of saying, well, why should I bother? But we enhance our appreciation for our own life by changing our own perception.
Sure.
Period. We don't have to worry about anybody else's path. We don't have to try to sell them on a theory or a philosophy. Changing our own perception changes our ability to enjoy life and be happy, and that's what counts. And whether it takes 100 years or 1,000,000 years to change humanity, that's not the point here. The point is, what are you doing to enhance the appreciation and experience of life yourself?
Or as even Mahatma Gandhi or even the Dalai Lama would say, is be the change that you wish to see.
Oh, absolutely. Be the love that you wish to receive. Be the life that you wish to enjoy. Be these things. And really, it does come down to something as simple as stop being everything you're not.
Now, what I'd love to do, it's always enjoyable when you see the potentiality of, for instance, teachings and workshops such as the Art of Dreaming, the Toltec Dreaming curriculum. I like to hear special stories of how people have transformed, how they came, they began to really grasp and embody these teachings. How has that transformed them into how they came back into their life, and what were the changes? Do you have like a special story of someone that you like to share with people?
Well, my stories, the most moving stories to me are the people that expected very little and got so much, and they just came with a lot of faith instead of a lot of resistance. And that's the key thing. And it usually involves, the beleaguered housewife or the divorcee or the people who are alone because their kids are left. And we reach a certain critical point in our lives where we wonder, well, who am I really? What have I been doing all my life, and how has it made me happy? I see I have lots of treasures, I have lots of possessions, and I'm enjoying them, but I can't really say I'm happy. And I would say, if I was to point out one story, it would be about, someone elderly, someone who spent his whole life, being a mathematics teacher, and how he's discovering that love isn't just, something that you read about in tacky novels. It's something that he can infuse every moment of his life with, and the rewards are he's smiling more. Everything is not so logical or mathematical, that the experience of life is actually romantic. Whether or not you have a partner, whether or not you have, interactions in ways that people assume are naturally romantic, your objective here is to open up the chance to have a romance with life. And anybody can do this. And anybody can see that you're the receiver and the giver at both equations here. You're the one giving all the life, all the love, and all the romance, and you're the one receiving it. And that's how life works, and that's how beautiful things and what we call miracles happen in our perception, although miracles are probably the most mundane thing there is. Miracles are everything. Everything's a miracle. Every process of creation and revelation is a miracle. So everybody is touched depending on their level of resistance or struggle. And I see the most, really self-condemned people after a few months of this work saying, I'm happy all the time. What's up with that? And they want to act suspiciously toward it. They want to poke at it, but the fact is they're getting out of their own way. They're getting their beliefs out of their way. They're getting old habits and patterns out of their way, so they can just respond to the moment. And they find that an authentic response is usually a loving response, and the response you get back from the world is just as loving.
Now, here's an interesting question, even though we're running short on time here, but this was one by the producer that I found quite interesting, is if we meet people in the dream world that we know and are living on the physical plane, are we communicating with them using our inner bodies?
That's probably going to require a more complicated answer, but...
Yeah, I guess I should have asked it earlier, but...
From the point of view of everything being virtual, really these people are not existing as they are in that dream. They're existing as you perceive them.
Good point. That is a very interesting way to answer that, because I kind of wondered that myself.
Well,
because
you're not conjuring people into your dream any more than you're doing it in your waking state. You're imagining everybody you know. It may not be the truth of them, but it's what's comfortable for you to imagine. And if people are coming into your dreaming state, seeming to have this form or that form, it's life messaging you, and life is going to get your attention any way it can, and it's probably going to use the key people in your life to deliver a message of peace, of gratification, of acceptance. We're imagining all of it, so it really doesn't matter whether it's this person or that person, or gosh, Gandhi just came into my dreams. This is the way life is communicating with us all the time. We're using key symbols in order to capture our own attention.
That's just great. It's been wonderful to talk with you. For those of you who joined the chat here, we're talking with Barbara Emeries. We're talking about the art of dreaming through the teachings of the Toltecs. Now, is there a website where I gave it earlier in the program, but go ahead and give your website so people can find out more about this. And I know that I don't usually do this because of time constraint, but you are teaching a workshop this Sunday, May 5th, as I understand, in Portland, Oregon?
Yes, in Portland, Oregon at the Jupiter Hotel. And you can find out more information, or at least ask for more information on my website, which is barbaraemrys.com, EMRYS.com. And you can just look me up under Toltec Dreaming, too, if you want to Google me, or just find me that way. I have all kinds of ways of being found.
Especially in the dream world, huh?
Exactly.
Well, Barbara, again, thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you for sharing the wisdom of how you can work and be with your dreams and learn to enjoy being in both realities, because ultimately they are the same reality. And we want to thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today.
Oh, thank you very much, Daniel.
You bet. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
In this reality. We'll be in the other one shortly.
Okay.
All right. Thank you again. Our guest today, Barbara Emeries, joining us here on the Art of Dreaming through the teachings of the Toltecs. And believe me, take away the idea of the woo-woo attitude, because really anybody who's ever dreamed can see an element of reality by the way they feel usually in the dream. So give it a shot, and if you're looking for that transformation that we've been talking about, just to be happy, to be more loving, to just really play in this world, this is certainly a good possible path for you to pursue if that's something you've been yearning for most of your life. Now's the time to do something about it. And you took that first important step by simply tuning into our program. We're here live 12 to 1 every Friday, Pacific Standard Time. Tell all your friends about us, and be sure to stop by our website, which is beyond50radio.com. That is 50 with a 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter, and also check out our blog, where you'll also find many of our recordings and archives. And want to also thank you all the listeners who are joining us here today on the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Tune in next week, and remember, live your day past halfway.